My name is Albert Jennings. I'm an Episcopal priest. I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a friend. I'm a neighbor. In 2010, our daughter Lee died by suicide. And in 2013, my brother Tom died by suicide. So I've spent a number of years in the wilderness of suicide grief, finding paths, making paths, finding some mentors, finding some colleagues along the way. I want to say that throughout these four sessions, I'm not offering this as a trained psychiatrist or psychologist. I am a human being that has had family members die by suicide, and I've learned things, I've experienced things, and that's what I'm sharing. Um, and just remember that rule number one is grieve your own grief. So just because I say something doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. There's a lot of information and research about suicide these days. I think we know a lot more than we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. We're going to know a lot more than we did in 15 to 20 years. At this point, about 50,000 people a year die by suicide in the United States, more men than women. And lately, the ages of people dying by suicide are coming down. Learnings. I've learned that there are different kinds of suicide, not so much the how, but I'll just give sort of two different examples. One example is of a person who it appears as though their life is fine. Everybody sees them as doing well. Maybe they're the friend that everybody leans on. Something happens in their life and they die by suicide, and it's a shock to everybody. That's one type of suicide. Another type is of a person that has had significant problems, physical, mental, emotional, and they have been on sort of a spiral downward despite maybe even the best efforts of themselves and of loved ones. And the end is just sort of the result of this downward spiral. Those are two very different suicides. The grief in regards to those suicides is, of course, very, very different as well. The delineation between suicide and other deaths is that the one who dies by suicide intended for that to happen. That's very different from a car crash, a heart attack, of cancer. That's what makes the grief very different, is for that moment, the person decided to end their own life or put themselves in a position that their own life would be ended. Um, Most people who die by suicide have had depression, but most people who have depression don't die by suicide, but there is a statistical link there. As told by people who've survived suicide attempts, and they get to a point where they can tell the story, because oftentimes people they call it waking up alive, and they're really mad because they had thought and hoped that they would be dead. But if they can work it through, oftentimes they tell sort of a scenario, if you will, that something painful happened at work or a relationship or in life. And it might have been a big thing or sort of a series of small things, but through a combination of it being a sort of a perfect storm, if you will, fear, panic, depression, shame, anger, disappointment, people find that the pain is unbearable. Is it always going to be like this? There's panic. I can't take it. What do I do? Is the pain ever going to stop? It's never going to stop. I'm a burden to those people around me. And then all of a sudden, it's like a light switch goes off. Tragically, a light switch goes off or goes on, and people say, I know what I want to do, and sort of develop sort of tunnel vision. I'm gonna make the pain go away. Because oftentimes that they say they really weren't seeking to die. What they wanted was for the pain to end. And the only way that they thought the pain was going to end was by taking their own life. I'll make it stop. At that point, unfortunately, they're not able to see that they are loved or are needed or are valued. They even can't see that the pain and grief that's going to be caused by it. Again, it's just that frantic panic. I need the pain to end. Um, and then they make a plan. They buy a train ticket. They buy a gun. They save up their pills. They look for a rope, and then they carry out the plan. Oftentimes, too, what happens is that if people do survive an attempt, that their brain kind of wakes up after 2 or 3 days, and they kind of go, "What the heck was I thinking?" But it's just at that perfect storm moment. And of course, this leads to a lot of what ifs and if onlys on the part of the people that are left behind. A few years ago, they actually considered changing the name of suicide, which is death of self, to panicide, which is death of the pain, but they decided not to do that. Suicide leaves behind many unanswered questions, and at least for me, that part of that hard work is to try to find as many answers as I can, and then just accept the fact that many of those answers that I want to know are not going to be answered.